The sun had barely risen over the steppe when the first screams began. Bound prisoners, trembling before their conquerors, watched as the Mongols demonstrated what happened to those who defied them. Their punishments were not just executions, they were messages written in agony. Every lash, every crushed bone, every final breath was designed to echo through empires. Today, we journey into the brutal heart of Mongol justice, a world where fear was the sharpest weapon of all. Stay till the end, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more stories that history tried to forget. The Mongol Empire rose from the frozen grasslands of Central Asia, forged by a man named Temujin, known to the world as Genghis Khan. To understand their punishments, you must first understand their purpose. For the Mongols, terror was strategy. They didn't torture for pleasure. They did it to break nations before battle even began. Their cruelty was cold, precise, and unforgettable. It wasn't just about killing. It was about ensuring no one ever dared to rise against them again. When the Mongols entered a conquered city, silence followed. Survivors whispered that their punishments were like shadows, unseen until it was too late. Thieves were executed by crushing, liars were mutilated, and traitors were drowned in molten metal. The empire thrived on fear, spreading it faster than armies could march. In Mongol law, punishment wasn't personal. It was sacred, written under the eternal sky, watched by the spirits of ancestors who demanded balance through pain. The Yasa, Genghis Khan's legendary code of law, outlined brutal punishments for those who defied the Khan's order. Murderers faced death, thieves lost their lives, and anyone who defied the Khan's authority met a fate beyond comprehension. Some say Genghis believed mercy was weakness. Others claim he simply knew what worked. Either way, his justice was absolute. No appeal, no compassion, only consequence. His laws turned men into weapons and disobedience into suicide. One of the most terrifying punishments was known simply as the rug of death. The condemned were rolled inside heavy carpets, and horses were driven over them until every bone shattered. It was quick, silent, and terrifyingly efficient. No blood spilled, which, to the Mongols, was sacred. They believed spilling royal blood offended the earth. So, they killed their nobles cleanly, crushed but not cut. Even their cruelty followed rules. In contrast, traitors or spies faced deaths that defied imagination. One tale speaks of men sewn into raw animal hides and left under the sun. As the hide dried, it constricted, crushing bones and suffocating lungs. Their screams, it was said, could be heard for miles. To the Mongols, this wasn't madness, it was balance. They punished betrayal with the same brutality that betrayal inflicted upon the unity of their empire. Captured enemies of war often faced public judgment. They were forced to kneel as Mongol soldiers reenacted their crimes, a psychological torture meant to strip them of dignity before the blade or bow. Witnesses described the silence before each execution, an entire army watching, emotionless. This display wasn't about vengeance. It was theater, a living performance meant to brand terror into the minds of anyone watching. Perhaps the most infamous punishment was reserved for enemy kings and generals. The Mongols had a rule: never kill royalty with direct bloodshed. So they devised inventive methods. One Persian prince was reportedly crushed beneath a wooden platform, and on that platform, Mongol generals feasted while he suffocated beneath their feet. Every bite of their meal symbolized dominion. It was more than death. It was humiliation sanctified by victory. Women and children of conquered cities were often spared, but their lives were not lives at all. Some became servants. Others were marked with hot irons to signify their enslavement. Entire families were branded like cattle, reminders of their submission. The Mongols broke not just the body, but the lineage. By erasing pride, they erased rebellion. Generations would remember the price of resistance. The Mongol way of punishment wasn't random cruelty. It was a psychological campaign. Before invading a new land, they sent rumors ahead. Whispers of burning cities, flayed generals, and men impaled for defiance. These stories arrived faster than their writers. Entire towns surrendered before the Mongols even appeared on the horizon. Terror had become a weapon sharper than any blade. When Mongols besieged Reshape in 1221, the rebellion inside the city sparked Genghis Khan's wrath. In retaliation, the Mongols executed nearly every inhabitant, some say over 100,000 souls. Historians dispute the number, but not the horror. Heads were piled into pyramids outside the walls, left as grim monuments to obedience. No word, no message, only the silent reminder that resistance was death. In Bokhara, when the Mongols entered the city's grand mosque, Genghis himself spoke. "If you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you." To his followers, this wasn't arrogance, it was divine justice. He saw himself as the sword of heaven, punishing the wicked to restore balance. His punishments, as horrific as they were, carried the aura of divine purpose. But behind this mask of divine retribution was cold calculation. The Mongols needed to rule over dozens of cultures, religions, and nations. Fear was the only universal language. A rebel could resist mercy, but not terror. They made punishment public, loud, and unforgettable, so that no one ever forgot who held the power to decide life or death beneath the eternal sky. Some of the Mongols' punishments were designed to erase memory itself. In conquered lands, they burned libraries, desecrated graves, and silenced entire bloodlines. It was punishment beyond the body. It was annihilation of history. Cities that resisted were wiped from maps, their names forgotten, their people reduced to ash and myth. Only the silence remained. Imagine standing in a burning square, surrounded by the wreckage of your home, as Mongol riders encircle you. You hear the sound of hooves, the smell of smoke and blood, the choking air heavy with ashes. In that moment, you understand, this is not war. It's judgment. You are witnessing the wrath of a world that believes fear is the truest form of order. The Mongol punishments weren't just physical, they were psychological warfare on a global scale. Prisoners were released intentionally, carrying the tales of horrors they had seen. Their trembling voices became instruments of propaganda. Every whisper they carried ensured that the next city would surrender without a fight. The Mongols didn't need to punish everyone, only enough to make sure no one forgot. Those who served under Genghis Khan lived by an oath. To betray it was to invite a punishment worse than death, dishonor. Warriors who fled battle faced execution, sometimes by their own comrades. Their bodies were left unburied, denied passage to the next world. In Mongol belief, to die without honor was to wander forever in the cold wind of the steppe. Death was not the end, disgrace was. Even foreign rulers learned the cost of betrayal. One legend tells of a Persian governor who broke his promise to the Mongols. When captured, molten silver was poured into his eyes and mouth, a cruel irony for his greed. Whether true or not, the story lived on for centuries. It became the embodiment of Mongol justice, poetic, merciless, unforgettable. What made the Mongols' punishments so feared wasn't the brutality alone, it was the certainty. Every soldier knew that Genghis Khan's laws applied to all, even his generals. In one case, a Mongol nobleman was executed for stealing a horse. The Khan didn't flinch. One law for all, he said. Justice, to him, was order. And order demanded obedience through fear. When Genghis Khan died, his successors continued his legacy. Under Ogdi, Monk, and Kublai Khan, punishment remained the cornerstone of authority. Even as the empire turned towards civilization and trade, its roots remained drenched in blood and discipline. The punishment system that had built an empire still haunted it, like a shadow that could never be outrun. But fear has a strange way of turning inward. Over time, the Mongols began to fear themselves. Court intrigues, betrayals, and assassinations became common. Punishments once meant for enemies now fell upon their own kind. The terror they unleashed became a chain around their necks. An empire ruled by fear, slowly consumed by it. In China, during the Yuan dynasty, justice was still swift and unforgiving. Thieves were executed publicly, rebels flayed alive, conspirators torn apart by horses. The empire had grown civilized, but its punishments still echoed the steppe. Beneath silk and stone palaces, the ancient wind of fear still blew. Historians today debate whether the Mongols were uniquely cruel or merely products of their age. The medieval world was brutal, yes, but the Mongols elevated fear into strategy. They didn't invent terror, they perfected it. Every punishment, every death, every whisper served a purpose: to control, to warn, to rule without question. And yet, there was method behind the madness. Under Genghis Khan's rule, trade flourished, crime decreased, and travelers could cross from Persia to China without fear of bandits. His brutal punishments created a kind of peace, the Pax Mongolica, a peace built not on trust, but on the certainty that any crime, any rebellion, would end in horror. Imagine walking through a city under Mongol rule at night. The streets are empty, the wind howling through alleyways. Doors stay locked, voices whisper prayers. No soldiers patrol, because none are needed. Fear itself keeps order. The memory of punishment is more effective than 1,000 guards. But with time, the fear faded. New empires rose, and the stories of Mongol punishments became legend, exaggerated, embellished, and passed down as tales to scare children. Yet beneath the myth lies truth, a civilization that used terror as a science, understanding that human fear could conquer faster than any sword. Modern historians see the Mongol punishments as a dark reflection of empire building. They remind us that power, when stripped of mercy, becomes monstrous. The Mongols didn't just punish, they transformed pain into a tool, a weapon that lingered long after their riders vanished into the horizon. Even today, the echoes of their cruelty shape our imagination. From tales of crushed kings to the burning of cities, the Mongol name still evokes dread. They are remembered not only for their conquests, but for their mastery of fear itself, a legacy that history cannot cleanse. So when we speak of Mongol punishments, we're not merely recounting brutality. We are confronting the oldest truth of all, that fear, once unleashed, never dies. It becomes legend, warning, myth. And through it, the Mongols achieved what few empires ever could, the power to haunt the world long after their fall. The fires of their conquests may have burned out, but the terror they ignited still flickers in memory. Genghis Khan's shadow stretches across centuries, a reminder that the most terrifying weapon is not the sword, but the fear of its strike. If you found this story as haunting as history itself, like this video, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter of humanity's darkest chronicles.